Of the nuclear age began 78 years ago with the flash of a man-made sun rising over the New Mexico desert. It was perhaps the most consequential and dangerous scientific experiment of all time, and the man who led it was Robert Oppenheimer.
If it was needed to put an end to the war and had a chance of so doing, we thought that was the right thing to do.
The events of that day, now the centerpiece of the new Christopher Nolan film, Oppenheimer.
The world will remember this day.
The movie recreating the top-secret nuclear bomb test in Los Alamos, New Mexico on July 16, 1945.
Are we saying there's a chance that when we push that button, we destroy the world?
Chances are near zero.
Near zero.
There were 100 things that could be done wrong, any one of which, as far as we knew, and we knew pretty much, could make the test a failure.
But the test was a success. In its aftermath, scientists say the ground at Ground Zero turned to glass by the heat of the explosion, and the Earth sunk by 9 feet.
We knew the world would not be the same.
Then just 3 weeks later, the next time the bomb was used was on Hiroshima, then Nagasaki, forcing the Japanese to surrender and changing the world forever.
I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Gadi Schwartz, NBC News.
Tonight.
All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem HaKakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who our land is true from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. You know, it's Monday, yet again, Missile Monday. You know, and I have a few articles that I want to go into. You know, this first one. And it says Sunday, July 16th, marks 78 years since scientists first tested nuclear bomb. So I'm just going to go into these couple articles that I have, bring out a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. It says Sunday, July 16th, marks 78 years since a group of scientists in the New Mexico desert performed the first nuclear bomb test. NBC News Gadi Schwartz details the moment ahead of the release of a new movie, Oppenheimer, that brings the events to life. And then, it's pretty much the clip, that I featured, as we know that guy, J. Robert Oppenheimer, he's pretty much, one of the scientists behind, the creating of, nuclear bombs, which has, pretty much evolved to nuclear missiles. So, that was the first article. Then the second one.
I don't know if we can be trusted with such a weapon.
I think primarily the impulse of the film is to try and really recreate the reality of the Manhattan Project. Well, the reality of all of Oppenheimer's life, with a particular focus on that moment where he assists and defines really the moment at which nuclear power is unleashed on the world. We wanted to put the audience there in that bunker, as they watch the first Trinity test. So that meant really trying to make these things as beautiful and frightening and awe-inspiring as they would have been to the people at the time.
All right, Slocky, I'm just going to read this one. It says, the threat is real. Our nuclear weapons are much more powerful than Oppenheimer's atomic bomb. So, this is from today, July 17, 2023. And it says, sure, it's no Barbie, but Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer is the most highly anticipated film about nuclear weapons in decades. With its impending release, we at the Nuclear Threat Initiative created a primer to set the scene and arm audiences with the most accurate information possible before you head to the theater to see the action yourself. It says, which countries has the most nuclear weapons? says Oppenheimer is a historical film, but the threat of Slovakia. But the threat posed by nuclear weapons is very real today. 9 countries now have nuclear weapons, with the United States and Russia posing about 90% of the world's nearly 13,000 weapons. At the same time, China's nuclear arsenal is rapidly increasing, potentially to 1,500 warheads by 2035. But, the way things are heading, pretty much they're going to have more before then, or they're going to use what they have, because, prophecy is speeding up. We're still waiting, for that, one of the main prophecies to take place, which is, the mark of the beast being made mandatory. It says Beijing currently has more than 400. Diplomatic relationships between Washington and Moscow have plummeted. U.S.-China relationships are at a historic low. Tensions between India and Pakistan, both nuclear-armed countries, India and China, continue to simmer, and North Korea's nuclear program is advancing. Unfortunately, public awareness of all these steadily increasing threats is very low, which is why many nuclear experts fear we could be sleepwalking into a nuclear disaster, and they are, because again, while, pretty much, these Americans are distracted with their bread and circus, these nations are gearing up for war, and then I have another article, about Kim Jong-un, he's steadily increasing his nuclear arsenal, and it says today's nuclear weapons are much more powerful than Oppenheimer's nukes. J. Robert Oppenheimer played a critical role in developing the first nuclear weapons as part of the top-secret Manhattan Project. 2 of those weapons were used against the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, obliterating both cities and killing hundreds of thousands of people. It says, who was J. Robert Oppenheimer? What to know about atomic bomb physicist's life, career, and death? It says Oppenheimer was shaken by the destruction brought by the weapons and the potential for them to inflict even greater destruction in the future. After seeing the first ever nuclear detonation in New Mexico on July 16th, 1945, he reflected that he knew the world would not be the same, and it hasn't, and then recited a line from Hindu scripture, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." A few years after the end of World War II, Oppenheimer opposed the U.S. government's plan to develop even larger nuclear weapons called hydrogen bombs, which were created anyway. Today, these kinds of weapons still exist in modern arsenals that include nuclear weapons 80 times more powerful compared with the bomb detonated over Hiroshima, and they have more accurate and survivable delivery systems, missiles, not just bombers, that can fly faster than the speed of sound. And yes, this is how powerful these missiles are today, Russia has plans to deploy them. Russia has plans to deploy even more powerful nuclear weapons soon. Oppenheimer and his colleagues predicted that a strategy of nuclear competition would cause an arms race, and he was right. And it's pretty much going into the U.S. and Ukraine. So, the threat of nuclear war is real, and the masses don't understand that, So again, just pretty much reading what I read, it ties in with this. That's what I always start with. You know, the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, verse 16, and it says, Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals and the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work, and I have created the waster to destroy. And yes, you know, again, that waster being these nuclear weapons, you know, these missiles in general, but, you know, nuclear weapons, you know, and again, the smith being, you know, these scientists, these physicists, you know, J. Robert Oppenheimer is just one of many that helped develop these weapons, you know, and again, just to go down to it, you know, he said, I have created the waster to destroy. And, you know, we don't subscribe to Hinduism, but he created, it's like he quoted a Hindu scripture, I am now become death, the destroyer of worlds. You know, again, that waster, you know, is going into those missiles, you know, because again, these weapons have become more and more advanced, you know, since the end of World War II, you know, and even the bombs that were dropped on Japan, you know, they became way more advanced because they don't have to fly over the cities now, you know. They can fly as it described, you know, just at a push of a button, you know, they can go from one end of the earth even to the other, you know. It's serious. So I'm going to bring this out from Al Jazeera.
North Korea's state media released this video, which appears to show the recent launch of North Korea's Hwasong-18 intercontinental ballistic missile. Japan confirmed it flew for more than an hour, rising to a height of more than 6 kilometers, achieving North Korea's longest ever missile flight time. The leaders of South Korea and Japan were meeting on the sidelines of the NATO summit in Lithuania when the launch took place on Wednesday.
North Korea launched an ICBM again. This is a threat to peace and stability in the region and the world. It's also a provocation and an obvious violation of UN resolutions.
The United Nations Security Council has adopted at least 9 major sanctions resolutions against North Korea in response to its nuclear and missile activities since 2006. But it hasn't stopped the launches. In fact, the tests are increasing.
North Korea's launch of an ICBM threatens the peace and safety of the international community, and we strongly condemn it.
North Korea says the Hwasong-18 is a part of what it calls its core nuclear strike force, a warning to the United States and its allies.
It's designed to hit the continental United States. It's not designed to hit sort of local targets. It's one of the really big ones, which we've all sort of seen on the internet. And that is always, for the Americans particularly, that's particularly a threat.
Pyongyang accuses Washington of increasing tensions in the Korean peninsula by deploying submarines and bombers to the region. In reaction to the launch, the US conducted military exercises with its South Korean ally in a show of force. Mike Lappel, Al Jazeera.
No. So North Korea is still, you know, testing their nuclear weapons. Just like you. the book of Joel, chapter 2. I'm going to start at verse 1. This is the terrible visitation. It says, "Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness." Excuse me, Slacky. "As the morning spread over the mountains, a great people and a strong. There hath not been ever the like, neither shall they be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as a garden. It's like the land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, nothing shall escape them. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen, so shall they run. It's like it, so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the top of mountains, they shall leap, like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. It says, behold, their face shall be much pained, on their faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men, they shall climb the wall like men of war, and they shall march every one on his ways. They shall not break their ranks, neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk every one in his path, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. They shall run to and fro in the city, and they shall run upon the wall. They shall climb up upon the houses. They shall enter in at the windows like a thief. The earth shall quake before them. The heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall become dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. And the Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great. For he is strong that executeth his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. Who can abide it? And yes, that just describes those nuclear missiles. They are the horsemen, because, a prime example of how those missiles are going to hit, America, from the movie 300, when Leonidas and his camp pretty much were ambushed. Well, I won't say ambushed, but pretty much they were attacked by the Persians, when the Persians shot their arrows at them, and there were hundreds, perhaps even thousands of arrows covering the sky. That's how it's going to be when those missiles hit. They're going to blot out the sun. They're going to blot out the moon. The stars, it's going to be very dark because they're going to cover the sky, missiles and chariots, the chariots of the Lord, they're going to cover the sky. But as far as these missiles, they're not going to break their rank. There's not going to be, nothing is going to intercept them. The U.S.'s missile defense system is going to fail, even if they have counter missiles that are going to try and shoot them down. They're just going to bounce off these missiles and keep going until they hit their target. So nothing is going to stop these missiles. The Spirit of the Lord is going to be in these missiles, And it says, who can abide it? So when that destruction comes, only a remnant, the elect of the nation of Israel, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the 144,000, the 1/3, only they are going to be able to survive, because they're going to be delivered from that destruction that the Lord is going to bring upon the earth, primarily to America, aka Babylon the Great, because this country is extremely wicked, you know. There's the book of Isaiah, chapter 9 and verse 5, you know, pretty much going into, you know, how this third world's war is going to be fought, you know. This is the book of Isaiah 9 and 5. And it says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood. But this shall be with burning and fuel of fire." Meaning, this war is going to be fought with nuclear weapons, nuclear missiles, you know, because traditional war is hand-to-hand combat, you know, swords, spears, shields, you know, things of that such, you know. But this war is going to be fought mainly with missiles, you know. But, you know, the masses, they don't understand. And I'm going to play this last clip. And then again, just, you know, for YouTube, I'm using these clips, you know, fair use purposes, not making money off of these.
Do you think we'll keep re-examining Oppenheimer as our understanding of quantum physics continues, as our taming of the atom continues, as our ability, if we ever get to, we're always, 30 years away from being 30 years away with cold fusion, right? All those things. Will we continue to relitigate his legacy?
I hope so. I mean, when I talk to the leading researchers in the field of AI right now, for example, they literally refer to this right now as their Oppenheimer moment. They're looking to his story to say, okay, what are the responsibilities for scientists developing new technologies that may have unintended consequences?
Do you think Silicon Valley's thinking that right now? Do you think they understand this is an Oppenheimer moment?
They say that they do, and that's that's helpful. That at least it's in the conversation, you know. And I hope that thought process will continue. I mean, I think. I'm not saying that Oppenheimer's story offers any easy answers to those questions, but it at least can serve as a cautionary tale. It at least could show, you know, where some of those responsibilities lie.
Christopher, if I could get you to do 2 screenings, right? I'd have you do 1 screening to the U.S. Congress. What would you hope they would take away from this?
I think more than anything, coming out of making the film and as it starts to go out into the world, I realized that we talked about this earlier, our relationship with the fear of nuclear weapons ebbs and flows with the geopolitical situation.
Right.
And it shouldn't, because the threat is constant. And very often, when you look back at history, some of the closest moments to nuclear disaster have actually been in times of relative calm geopolitically. So even though the situation in Ukraine kind of puts it more in the forefront of people's minds, the truth is nuclear weapons are an extraordinarily dangerous thing to have lying around the house. And it is not something we should ever forget about, and it's not something we should take lightly. And one of the things that frightens me the most about, you know, you talk about coming home from work with anxiety, but when I hear in the media reasonable people talking about tactical nuclear weapons,
right,
as if this distinction can be made, and can be made via first politicians and media sort of warming us up to the idea that perhaps there's a certain size of nuclear weapon that would be acceptable as opposed to the large ones.
One more screening I want you to have, which is in Silicon Valley. And what do you want those guys to take away from this film?
I think what I would want them to take away is the concept of accountability. Not to sideline the conversation to the labor disputes going on in Hollywood right now, but a lot of it, when they're talking about things like AI, when we talk about these issues, they're all ultimately boiled down to the same thing, which is when you innovate with technology, you have to maintain accountability. And the rise of companies over the last 15 years who bandy about the words like algorithm, not knowing what they mean in any kind of meaningful mathematical sense. People in my business talking about it, they just don't want to take responsibility for whatever that algorithm does. And applied to AI, that's a terrifying possibility, terrifying. Not least because as AI systems go into the defense infrastructure, ultimately they'll be in charge of nuclear weapons. And if we allow people to say that that's a separate entity from the person who's wielding, programming, putting that AI into use, then we're doomed. It has to be about accountability. We have to hold people accountable for what they do with the tools that they have.
Meet the press now.
All right. I'm going to go to the book of Malachi, chapter 4 and verse 1. It says, "For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble, and the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch." And yes, America is going to be left completely desolate, once this war is over, because it's going to take the Lord, only 1 hour to destroy this place, So I'm going to come to the book of Slaki. Book of 2 Peter, chapter 3, and verse 10. And it says, "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness, looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of Yahweh, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat." And yes, those missiles are going to be extremely hot, The sun itself is 15 million degrees Celsius, These nuclear missiles are going to be burning at 100 million degrees Celsius, They're going to burn extremely hot, and it says the heavens, meaning, there's no telling how large, these flames are going to be, but they're going to burn so hot that it's even, the oxygen, is even going to catch on fire, It's going to be extremely hot. So pretty much, again, it's going to be a terrible day, when the Lord visits this place, and that great noise again being those missiles being launched, because you're going to hear them, you're going to see them coming, and then ultimately, they're going to cause the earth to shake, Don't want to get that. It's the book of Isaiah, chapter 24 and verse 20. And it says, "The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgressions, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again." And yes, the transgressions of America is heavy. The sins of America, have reached unto heaven. And then, once those missiles launch, 200 million warheads are going to hit this land and utterly destroy it, America is going to be left completely desolate. Excuse me. And then, the book of Isaiah 34 describes, how America is going to look, after that destruction. We're going to get Revelation chapter 18 and verse 19. And it says, "And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour is she made desolate." So yes, these other nations that make money off of America, they're going to weep because they're going to see the smoke, from this land. They're going to know that America has been destroyed, and it's only going to take the Lord 1 hour to completely wipe this place off the map. These other nations are going to be sad because they can't make money. They can't sell their products anymore, But that's how great this destruction is going to be. It's not going to take the Lord that long to do it, And I'm going to end it on this. It's the book of Revelation, chapter 9. And I'm going to start at verse 15. And it says, "And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men," because you have 3 classes of men. You have the sons of God, which are the Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. The sons of men, which are, the other heathen nations. And, the wicked being, the nation of Edom, so-called white people, Verse 16, "And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire, of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these 3 was the third part of men killed by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails were like unto serpents and had heads, and with them they do hurt." And yes, they're describing when these missiles get launched, the tails again, from the video that, I featured about North Korea, that missile launching, having a tail like a serpent is going into that rocket system that is going to be propelling these missiles, to hit their target, because a lot of these missiles are going to be shot into space, They're going to get their specific coordinates, their specific targets, then they're going to enter back into the Earth's atmosphere on fire because they're going to be traveling so fast, So we're going to be like stars, falling from heaven, And then again, the most damage comes from the warhead in the missile, I'm going to bring out a couple more. It's the book of Mark, chapter 13. I'm going to start at 24, and it says, "But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken." And yes, again, going into those missiles, that are going to be launched, that are going to shake the earth, because there's going to be so many of them, It's going to do a lot of damage. And then I'm going to end it on this, because this is how vivid, this is the damage that these missiles are going to do to people. A prime example of this would be from the movie Terminator 2, the scene with Sarah Connor when she had that dream. you know. This is what's going to happen to these people that are left here in America, you know. There's the book of Zechariah, chapter 14 and verse 12. And this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. And yes, you know, they're going to be melted, you know. The Spirit of the Lord, you know, is a consuming fire. So the Lord's Spirit is going to be in these missiles, you know, it's going to be in that fire. And then, you know, there's no telling how long, you know, this fire is going to burn. It's going to burn for a long time, you know, because it won't be quenched, you know. But it's going to burn for an extremely long time. Then I'm going to bring out this last scripture. And this is going into the elect, you know. It's the book of 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 17. For the time is come that judgment must first begin at the house of Yahweh. And if it first begin at us, where shall be the end of them that obey not the gospel of Yahweh? So, you know, the judgment of the Lord is going to start with, you know, the nation of Israel, in particular those that, you know the truth, you know. But this is going to be the outcome, you know. Verse 18, and if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear? They're going to be left to feel that fire, you know, the lake of fire, you know, which is going to be America being engulfed in flames, you know, not a literal hell, you know, that's burning underground. You know, it's talking about, you know, the destruction that these missiles are going to bring upon this land, you know. So the elect are going to scarcely be saved. They're going to be delivered, but it's going to seem as, you know, they barely made it when this destruction comes. So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say shalom.